Welcome. In my last video concerning the Mac Pro, I had mentioned that I would be posting an update or two on how things are going. This would be the first update video. I intend to show you how some of the changes that I made and how the Mac Pro is set up inside in terms of where solid state and hard drives are located, show you how it works out on the desktop of the two primary operating systems. The one big change that I've made, and it caused some consternation in getting things moved around, but I managed to sort it all out and get it going. When last I left you, I had Mojave, the last supported OS on this particular machine, running on a Crucial NVMe SSD attached to a PCIe slot. That, from all of my reading, to me it seemed, okay, this is going to be the fastest possible source. And I installed Catalina on a Silicon Power SATA SSD. Well, one of the things that jumped out at me instantly as I went back and forth between the two, which I certainly needed to do at first, was how much faster Catalina was booting up. Now, it may very well simply be that Catalina boots up a little faster than Mojave. In fact, I think it does. But not so much as to account for what I was noticing. The Catalina Silicon Power would boot up in generally 45 seconds, maybe close to 50 on a slow time through, and I ran that a number of times. Whereas Mojave on the Crucial drive was taking minute 15, minute 20 seconds. Not a horrifically long time, but long enough. Now, of course, a Mac Pro, this machine now has several hard drives connected to it. One by FireWire, one by two by SATA connection, and there's a lot of storage on those. They've got to spin up, and that of course slows up the boot. But it was very noticeable how much faster it was. As I got into making some real-world tests, I mean, I ran the benchmarks on both of them, and they were virtually the same as to make no difference, which is what you would expect. The other hardware is all the same. The CPUs are the same, the GPU is the same, etc. However, the one that jumped out at me first of all was rendering videos out of iMovie. Now, iMovie, of course, render times are nothing like render times out of Final Cut Pro, from what I understand, but still, I did, the rendering of the last video was done on iMovie on the Silicon Power Catalina, and it was about 30 minutes long, and it exported in 7 minutes. Whereas 30-minute, roughly, videos were exporting on the Crucial drive in Mojave in 35, 40 minutes. I went back and in Catalina I exported the same video that I had already exported on Mojave, and it was the same thing. Now, it was just so dramatically faster. It was unbelievable. And I did a number of other real-world tests. And generally, consistently, the speeds were better. So what's doing it. I know that Crucial Drive is not the greatest in NVMe. It's about middle of the pack according to ratings that you'll see. Could there be something wrong with that drive? I don't think so. I mean, I tried different PCIe slots. It always came out the same. So basically at this point, I've still got that Crucial Drive in the machine. It's additional storage. Not that I need the additional storage, but it's there. There's no need to take it out. If I do need another PCIe slot, I'll be taking that out probably. I put the Mojave installation onto the Silicon Power 1 terabyte SSD, which I still look at that as the main working OS. You know, it's probably going to be the most stable. Although the Catalina's been behaving itself super well. God bless DasDude 1 for his Patrick. I put Catalina onto an SSD that I happen to have kicking around. It's a 128 gig of Vertex SSD, which is pretty fast little drive. I mean, it's big enough to hold Catalina, and at this point what I'm doing on it is very simple stuff. Although I can do actual work on it, as I've said, it's might as well be a normal Catalina installation. We'll see what happens when the next point update comes out. So I'm going to be showing you what things look like on those two different operating systems. Also some tests that I ran concerning USB copying speeds that, again, I found a little surprising in terms of those two cards that I put in there, but you'll see that later in the video. So I certainly hope that you enjoy it, and we'll be right back with you. I thought we should take a look at the outside of the Mac Pro. It's largely put together. One of the things I have done here is to order the drives that are in there. There are 4 SATA SSDs. The PCIe SSD is still in there. But the 4 SATA SSDs are two terabyte storage drives and 2 boot drives. So I've reorganized things a bit to put the two terabyte storage SSDs here into the multi-mount that is in the lower optical drive bay. And in the first sled is the 1 terabyte boot drive from Mojave, which is the main working OS on the machine. In here is a 128 gigabyte SSD that has the patched, the DasDude 1 patched version of Catalina on it, which I'm considering to be experimental. And yes, while it is experimental at this point, thus far it's been behaving like a perfectly normal installation of Catalina. We shall see what happens when the next update comes around. All right, and then 2 hard drives. Right now there's a 1 terabyte hard drive in the third sled. That's a boot drive for High Sierra. I'm planning on taking that one out at some point, replacing it with a 3 terabyte drive that's going to be coming in a different machine that you'll see later. I don't think there's any real need to be able to boot into High Sierra on this machine. I'm going to keep the disk around and keep the installation there. You never know. And then here is the 8 terabyte storage drive. But we're not done. I picked up on eBay, threw an offer out on it. I thought it was a pretty low price, but the seller accepted it. So I've got an old Western Digital G-Raid. There's currently two terabyte hard drives in there, combined in a RAID array. And that's plugged in. Right now it's plugged into FireWire, because why not? It actually does connect via USB 3, which would be noticeably faster. I suspect I'll do that. Now, the big reason for reorganizing things, I would hope that these storage drives can just stay in the multi-mount. It may be necessary from time to time for me to take out the sled for the optical drive and these two drives, but I shouldn't have to actually remove the drives themselves from those blue mounts that are in there. We shall see. All right, so I'm going to put this thing back together, and then we'll be booting it up again. As I said, everything has been behaving perfectly well. It's like a completely normal installation with Catalina. Everything works. Night shift works without issue. Continuity, yeah, all seems to work out fine. AirDrop, thank the Lord, is working very, very well. So we're good. Let's take a look in about this Mac. And most particularly at the storage. See the Vertex SSD, which is still, got over half of its very small capacity available and running very, very well. The Crucial SSD at 1 terabyte, still in there. Okay, the Macintosh, this is a 1 terabyte SSD with High Sierra installed on it. I intend to be replacing that with a 3 terabyte drive that's going to be coming in. Actually, it's going to come out of another machine. All right. A drive is just put in, the Samsung SSD 2 terabyte storage drive. This actually is the Samsung QVO, the Samsung Budget SSD, since at this point it's basically an auxiliary storage SSD. And I use the storage SSDs to keep things that I will be working on and not necessarily going to be archiving it. Plenty of room for that. The SanDisk, which is the 2 terabyte SSD that I had been using for exactly that purpose. The Seagate, that's the 8 terabyte HDD, where I archive things. There's actually a healthy amount on there. There's over there's a lot that's been used, and there will be a lot more to be used, certainly. And then the Silicon Power SSD is a 1 terabyte SSD. That is the working Mojave installation. Okay, we can close out of that. Cute little icons to put on there for the Vertex SSD boot, the boot drive. Then the SanDisk and the Samsung. Those are the two 2 terabyte storage SSDs. The Crucial, which is just sort of there. Silicon Power, that's the boot drive for Mojave. Seagate, it's the main storage hard disk. The Macintosh, that's got High Sierra on it. And then the G-Raid, which is just sort of there. As I pointed out, I got it for a very, very, I think somebody just wanted to get rid of the thing, so I figured why not. All right, now that's obviously a lot of drives, and it's not the most sensible way of organizing them. What I intend to do, there are two drives in the G RAID which I've put into an N RAID, and I could have put them in RAID 0, but N RAID seemed to work. It's not like I'm using them for speed or anything. Now, I am going to be replacing this Macintosh hard drive with High Sierra. That's probably going to end up going in another machine. Although I can keep it around, still be able to pull it out. You never know when I may actually need to be able to boot up into High Sierra. And then we'll have the 8 terabyte Seagate plus a 3 terabyte other drive. I'm going to put those two into an N RAID as well. Couldn't really put them into anything but N RAID since they're unequal size of disks. But that's going to cut down on the apparent large number of disks that we see here. So anyway, that's probably going to come in the future at some point. Maybe you'll see the result of that in a future update. I would like to go back to Mojave and share the tests of the two USB PCIe cards that I put in, because I found those to be very, very instructive. So we'll be right back in Mojave. Here, booted into Mojave on the Silicon Power card, Silicon Power solid state drive. I want to share with you the results of some of these real world tests that I've been running, most particularly on USB transfer speeds. It's been very instructive. If you saw some of the earlier videos in this series, you will have seen that I was debating whether to put an Ablecon PCIe card in, which would give one USB-C port and one USB 3.1A port. Either that or the Initech USB 3 4-port card. Since I had an extra PCIe slot, I decided to put both of them in. Now, I said at the time, if I come up with a need for one of those PCIe slots, one of those cards is going to have to go, and I would do some testing to see which one of them would be the odd card out, as it were. So I'm sharing with you the results of this testing, and you can see exactly what went on. What I've got is a Samsung T5 500 gigabyte SSD. These are wonderful cards. Pricey, to be sure, but just remarkable at USB 3 speeds. So I'm going to use this same drive, copying the same folder. It'll be this Mac Mini SATA movie folder. Those are the constituent parts of the YouTube video I made where I fixed the SATA connection on a 2010 Mac Mini. That folder comes to just slightly under 14 gigabytes. So I'm going to keep copying that folder over. The only difference, it'll be the same folder to the same drive. The difference being how that drive is connected to the Mac Pro. Right now, we're on the Ablecon USB-C port, which general understanding would give us should be the fastest. So we'll see. Go. 1 minute, 11.77 seconds. Now, there's, my reactions that could vary a little bit. So, really just under 1 minute, 12 seconds. Let's clean some things up so we don't build in unnecessary things. Okay. Now, staying with the Abelcon card, but this time into the USB-A port. Go. One minute, 11.12 seconds. Now that's been pretty consistent. They're virtually the same, but with this card, the USB-A port consistently delivers ever so slightly faster speeds than the USB-C. That shouldn't be, but it is. And I have tried, lest you wonder, moving the cards around, putting them into different PCIe slots. It's making no difference whatsoever. All right, but essentially, same thing. Okay, let me clean up a little bit. All right. So those are the two ports on the Abelcon. Now we're on the Initech 3.0 card. All right. Same folder. Go. One minute, 11.01 seconds. A little bit faster. All right. Let's clean up again. Okay. We're going to try one more thing here. Now, I have a HRO 7-port powered USB 3.1 hub, which I have plugged into one of the ports on the Initech 4-port 3.0 card. We will try now the same test. How will the port do as opposed to plugging in directly? Go. 1 minute 11.25 seconds. All right, now differing times, but the reality, all of those tests have resulted in substantially the same speeds, which would lead me to think there's no particular reason to keep the Ablecom card in there. There's only 2 ports. What is it really accomplishing? I've got 4 ports. Now, one of those is taken up by the webcam. One of those, of course, by plugging the hub in, but that still leaves 2 open ports on the card. And the 7 on the hub, that's plenty. I really don't need those 2 extra ports on the other card, and they're not giving me any speed benefits, which had been the initial hope. All right, now, for those of you with a sense of humor and time on your hands, all right, the Samsung T5 has appeared again. This time I plugged it into one of the built-in USB 2 ports. Now, if you would rather just fast forward through this and not see any of it, I certainly would not be offended, but let's just get that comparison. USB 2. Go. Okay. Close enough to 6 minutes 55 seconds. Wow. All right, so to sum up, if you are considering setting up a Mac Pro, there are PCIe slots available. Over the graphics card, there'll generally be 3. I would say one of those has absolutely got to go to a USB 3 card. Because that's very, very dramatic. I've heard people say that USB 3 is 10 times as fast as USB 2. This test would make it somewhat more than 5 times as fast, but that's still pretty darn significant. So yes, at some point, I mean, the thing is in there now, I'm not going to bother to take it out, but if I do run across a need for one of those PCIe slots, the slot with the USB-C port, there's just no point in keeping it. Now, are there other USB-C cards by other manufacturers? Or perhaps there's something wrong with this card? I really don't know, but I'm very happy with those USB 3 speeds, and that's where I'm looking to be. So that will end our USB test here. We're enjoying Mojave on the Silicon Power SSD. It's gone very, very well. So, well, to sum up, this video, this is quite a computer, and I've enjoyed so much working on it. As far as what's upcoming with it, about the only real modification I have planned, there are some SATA splitter for the SATA power, and some extra data cables, which should enable me to have both the 2 SSDs that are in the multi-mount in the second optical drive bay and the optical drive itself plugged in simultaneously. And I may actually have a use for that optical drive. We shall see in the near future. I do have a couple of Mac Mini videos planned. They've been pushed onto a back burner because I've been very focused on the Mac Pro. But maybe I'll get to those this weekend in this upcoming week. More likely this weekend or later. There is still some Mac Pro content yet to come. One that should drop sometime around Christmas, and then one sometime around New Year's Day, or perhaps the early part, just after New Year's. I shall leave those as surprises, but I certainly hope you have enjoyed this. I have enjoyed the heck out of working on this machine, and I'm glad you've been along for the ride to see what's going on with it. So take care, and if you do see this in the near future, Merry Christmas coming up.